Good evening, everybody.
Good evening, Ken.
Howdy.
Hi, Ken.
Welcome, everyone, to episode 591, believe it or not. Is Halloween harmless and the occult roots meaningless in our modern, and the occult roots meaningless in our modern age? Which is quite fitting for tonight, seeing as how it is the world's Halloween celebration. We have Stan and Wayne, and again, my friend on the other end, Dr. Ricks. If you would start us out, that would be wonderful.
Okay, these are Rita's high-quality groaners. Remember, high-quality groaners. Be prepared to groan. You wonder where the word aerobics comes from? Well, a bunch of exercise instructors got together. We can't charge people by the hour for just jumping up and down.
Ouch.
Well, you know those gas masks that drop out of the ceiling, they tell you when the plane loses pressure in the air? Well, the guy says, I don't think they're really full of oxygen. They're there to just mask the screams. The guy said, I went to my cosmetic surgeon to get some cosmetic surgery, and I looked on the wall, and I changed my mind because he had a bunch of portraits by Picasso.
Mm-hmm. Oh, man.
Yeah, your laugh box isn't working.
My laugh box isn't
it's
working?
It's not coming through.
Mm-mm.
You can't hear it.
No.
Oh,
no.
Shucks. What in the world?
I'll laugh for you.
Okay, here we go. So you all missed the best part of it, the laugh box. Okay, here's one that really makes a lot of sense when you think about it. He says, usually when I go to the bank, they have two tellers. But when it's really, really busy, they have only one.
There you go.
That's coming through.
And this one I kind of like in an odd sort of way. This lady says, I think men with pierced ears make the best husbands. You want to know why? Because they've already experienced both pain and buying jewelry. And the final one is, there's one advantage in working for yourself. It's fun, but there is a disadvantage. When you call in sick, you know you're lying. Okay, maybe that made up for the laugh box not being able to get through. Okay. Well, at any rate, now we get back on the subject. But by the way, don't you think it's really something that most people would say, well, kids trick-or-treating, it's a harmless thing. Why wouldn't God and Christianity be all for it?
Well, because it's based and steeped in rank paganism. That's why. And God don't go for paganism. Yeah, and nothing, I mean, it's just not good influences come out of it.
Right.
And basically, kids are distorting, and theoretically, candy based on tricks, witches, vampires, and dead spirits.
Yep, it's an extortion ring for 8-year-olds.
Yep.
Oh.
Well
So
said.
we're going to do something that most people wouldn't dare do. Although there are some churches that have canceled Halloween on their schedule, and they know that it's the occult is not good for people to mess with. But they're the minority of churches. Most people think, oh, it's just harmless. So let's go through an in-depth Bible analysis to see what God, our Creator, thinks of Halloween and why he thinks it. So first of all, let's go to the Bible. Before we go to 1 Corinthians 10:19, anybody want to say anything else that I may have rushed us into about how it seems so harmless?
Yeah, I mean, I would encourage people, and most of the people in the church have done this, but to go back and look at the origins of all this stuff. Look at the origins of bobbing for apples. Look at the origins of pumpkins, and there's stuff I won't even describe what this stuff originated as. But it's very, very sick, and it's very satanic. And just because they've washed it up a bit doesn't mean it's okay with God.
Yeah, the origins are with the Druids. At least that's where most of the origins go back to, the Druids and Samhain.
Yeah.
The Samhain was the,
Samhain, yeah.
yeah, that's the
Yep.
pronunciation for their festival, if you will.
Yep.
I wanted to add too, maybe from a different perspective. You know, even, of course, we're going to go through the biblical uh, references in the Bible tonight, but also, have you noticed a couple of things that was on my mind? Have you noticed that Halloween decorations are getting more and more evil looking? I mean, they're getting
Morbid.
bigger and more terrifying, and there seems to be no end to the, the gore, the weird, skeletons that are 15 feet tall in people's yards now, and all of the ugly looking, horrific things. I wonder what it does to a little 5-year-old child. But also wanted to ask the question, what's logical about Halloween? I mean, when you think about the sense of evil, I mean, what it represents, just forget about what the Bible says for a moment and just think of it logically. Is that really what I want to show my 5-year-old child? And then if we do look at the Bible, we're going to obviously, what do you think Jesus would think if he walked into a big department store, a big box store, and saw all of this display right at the opening, when you come in? What do you think his reaction would be? And of course, what do the biblical references say about this season? And the growing grotesqueness of all of it, because at one point in time, it was just a few things, a few accoutrements of Halloween, and now it's like people go overboard with their displays and ghoul and and blood. And I saw a car the other day that had a skeleton, like a dismembered body hanging off the side of it, and the blood and everything. I mean, it just went almost Hollywood in the graphics of it, and I don't know. I think if people would just think of it logically, they would determine that Halloween is probably not a good thing. And of course, if you look at it biblically, you're going to find more evidence that it's not.
Well, look at the
Everybody's
spending.
everybody's got to outdo their neighbor and how nasty
Yeah.
they can. And people have
Mm,
Halloween trees. Some people,
Yes.
Halloween is their favorite holiday. I mean, they
Mhm.
treat Halloween like some people treat Christmas, and they make a biggest deal of it. And when I was a kid, it wasn't nothing like this. It was just a blip. You got free candy. There was very little of all this going on. There was no yard decorations other than someone would take some old clothes and shove some leaves in it and stick it in the front yard. That's about it.
Mhm.
That's as far as it went.
Or
Now
carve a
it's
pumpkin.
nuts.
Yeah, second highest expenditure of festivals in the United States.
Yeah. Halloween is the number 2.
$10 to $12 billion a year, believe it or not. 10
Wow.
to
Probably
$12
growing.
billion a year. When it comes around each year, there always pops up here in a major, like Tyler or Longview, some old building that's been vacant for years. They're making enough money that they can rent that building for the month and fill it full of all of the costumes and everything. And I guess make enough money to pay the rent and still come out ahead because they do it every year.
A haunted house, you mean?
No, I mean where they sell the costumes and all the
Oh,
decorations.
Oh, those
for it.
Halloween pop-up stores?
Yeah.
Mhm.
Just
Yeah.
they'll pop up for 1 month and then
30
they're
days.
gone. But so they're making they're like the fireworks stand that show up 2
Mhm.
days out of the year and make their fortune.
You're paid. Kim, would you read 1 Corinthians 10:19, please?
What am I saying then? That an idol is anything, or what is offered to idols is anything? Rather that the things which the Gentiles sacrifice, they sacrifice to demons and not to God. And I do not want you to have fellowship with demons. You cannot drink the cup of the Lord and the cup of demons. You cannot partake of the Lord's table and of the table of demons.
Here's what I would say. It's probable that most people, in the world, during the pagan history of mankind, most of them didn't fully realize they were dealing with evil spirits.
Mhm.
They thought they were appeasing the gods of war, the gods of weather, the gods of fertility, the gods of victory, safety. There's a whole range of them, romance, prosperity. So I'm not saying they all, although some of them probably knew, some of the witch doctors and the head guys, but a lot of them didn't realize that. But they say, well, at least the Druids used to say there's a line between the two worlds, the living and the dead. And on Halloween night, that line is kind of melted away,
Mhm.
and the demons can cross over, and again, or you can cross over to them. I thought, that's kind of creepy, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's kind of scary to think about, And one of the other things too is if you do care to look in to see what the Bible says about this subject, think about all the nations, what God did to the nations that had to do with the occult and with, necromancy and with witchcraft and witches and all those references in the Bible where he dealt with those that were, the occult and enchantments and charmers. All of those words are mentioned in the pages of the Bible, and what he did to nations that had succumbed to that, to that activity, and what he felt about it. If you care to look and see what he thinks about all those.
One of the things that I think bothers people, when you read in the Bible that God punished Israel for worshiping false gods, you think, is God making too much of paganism? It's just a bunch of idols and chants. But actually, what went along with idolatry was the dark occult and a lot of bad things. Ken, let's take a look at some of the exhibits that went along with pagan, adult, occult cultures that dealt with the dark magic and that kind of stuff.
All right, we've got a list up here. We've got 6 points. Participation in the occult could involve interaction with demons. People like to play with things like Ouija boards and things like that, more so this time of year. Nature worship, which involves Mother Nature and Father Sky idols. You see that in cartoons. They try to bring it in with the kids. Things like Captain Planet and other things that showed the Earth as almost as a god or a mother god symbol. Superstitious fears of heavenly bodies involving sun or moon worship. Historically, often includes human sacrifices, normally infants.
By the way, when they do archaeology, a lot of ancient big buildings and old temples and stuff, they often find the cornerstone a lot of small skulls from infants that were sacrificed. Somehow they thought that sacrificing these infants would bring that temple and that little group blessings. And by the way, do you know that human sacrifice was done even in the New World? By the way, I know a young man took a honeymoon cruise to Mexico. They went to where the Aztecs threw people into the volcano, and they apparently have fairly accurate records of the many, many people that the Aztecs threw in. They were proud of it. And it's not a secret.
Yeah, the Aztecs were and the Mayans too, I think, were some of the most nasty, vile, bloodthirsty, brutal people. They are not to be honored or held up. They were a nasty, vicious society. They weren't all these wonderful people.
And this sort of thing went around all over the world. Maybe it varied, different places: Asia, Africa, Middle East, Europe, Eastern Europe, Central, all over the world. There are variations of this kind of thing. Idolatry and mistreating of children, they've often gone together.
Hand in hand.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Some included worshiping the gods of war and violence as well, and often includes temple prostitution with children sold into sex slavery. That's something else I think they found outside of temple prostitution was mass graves of infants.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah, I think it was one of the Aztecs. They found a well that was. They went down in this well and explored this well, and they found in the bottom of this well bones of infants that had been sacrificed and thrown in this well, and it was actually preserved. But also over in Rome, at the down in the old ruins there, they have the temple to the Vestal Virgins. You know, that was one of the highlights. The very right there in the sacred part of that old ancient city. You know, and of course, we know that the Romans served gods of war and just you gods of violence as well. You know, that was a hallmark of their history.
if you look up an article, you can find it. It's probably about 15 or more years old. This guy who used to be in Satanism, he was a Satan worshiper. He used to perform. You're not gonna believe it, but the guy wrote an article and he said when he was into Satan worship, he would go into abortion clinics with the woman and perform ceremonies during the abortion.
Yeah.
Wow.
Satanic ceremonies during the abortion, and the abortion clinics didn't seem to mind.
Fit
Blood
in nicely.
sacrifices, in other words.
What's that?
Blood sacrifices, in
Exactly
other
what they
words.
did. And he got out. He according to the article, he got out of it. He became a Christian for what that's worth. But still, I mean, the stuff happens, and if you believe this man's story, it happens in this country. Some of you may have seen. Wayne's probably seen the video clip of the abortion doctor, who somebody tried to interview him or something, and he sounded like he was demon possessed. I think they fired him after the interview because he was so just vile. But talking about how he loved doing his job and he loves killing. I mean, he's had the voice coming out of his mouth was not a human voice. If you watch the video, but this stuff is happening. It's happening in this country.
And another why the guy didn't like idolatry, people who did more research have discovered, there were 1,000 temple prostitutes in Corinth. And that's why Paul warns them about that so much. You make an offering to the temple, and part of the process, you get to sleep with a prostitute. And they had male prostitutes too. But what they now discovered is these women didn't just join the temple for a, quote, easy job and to make extra money. Most of them were sold or given by their parents when they were 9, 10, 11, or 12. Because a lot of pimps like young people for that kind of thing. It doesn't shock anybody, but they were started young, probably burned out in their 30s and 40s. But that, in other words, children were like slaves, sex slaves to these false pagan temples. And that's a horrible thing to ruin somebody's life. But before people get all so righteous today, do you know there are still hundreds of thousands of missing children?
Oh yeah. Probably
Every
at least
week I
hundreds
see
of
them
thousands,
posted.
yeah.
Every week I see them posted. Look out for this, 13-year-old, or and of course the immigration process that's coming across the border here in Texas. These young girls especially go across the border, and boys too. When they come across, they come up missing, and no one knows where they go. They've not even really had time to be documented, and they disappear, and no one's heard from them again.
And
Sad.
What happened to the children of Maui too?
Oh,
There was
that.
like 1,000 children that
yeah.
went missing there, and they just have gone off the radar screens of the news media.
Yeah, when that fire hit, all the kids were sent home, and they had nowhere to go. That was horrific, man.
Mm-hmm.
And we just assume criminal gangs are at least using some of these kids for prostitution. I guess some are selling drugs too. Maybe they might do a little of both. And this is happening in the modern world of today.
Unbelievable. Good old USA.
Yeah.
You know, so God had a reason why he didn't like paganism. And it wasn't just, I mean, it's important that they pulled them away from the true God, but it wasn't just that. It was all that went with it.
Well, but that's not the way we celebrate it. That's what people will say today.
Yes, yes,
It's the
yes.
same old, excuse they say when it comes to other holidays such as Easter or Christmas, which we know are equally as pagan in their origins. But when it's almost like playing with an open electrical wire. It's toying with something that is so dangerous. And the reason we bring up all of these horrible examples here is because they're connected to what people are celebrating. Actually, tonight is on Halloween night. I'm glad I'm here doing this show with you and not out in the streets tonight. But
Yeah.
God is just like the parent that tells the little child to stay away from the electrical socket. It's dangerous. It can kill you. And I guess in a way, God sees these celebrations, these, toying with these pagan ideas of worship and experimenting with them can lead to something far worse.
Death.
And people don't take it very seriously, I believe.
Yeah, the Bible says not to suffer a witch to live, not dress up like them and go beg for candy.
Yeah.
By the way, I was listening to J.D. Vance, and a student was asking him about why don't we have a total separation of church and state and keep Christian ideas, concepts, prayers out of the school system, keep things neutral. And I love J.D. Vance's answer, at least part of the answer was, he said, you think it's a neutral environment in the school system. He said, there is no such thing as neutrality.
Yeah.
When you pull godly biblical principles away, you think, I'm now going to a neutral world. No, it's not neutral. Those teachers who pulled you away from God have an agenda. You just don't see it, obviously. It's socialism, communism, atheism, and maybe even a few little pagan things thrown in too, and little LGBTQ things. In other words, there is no neutrality. If you're not with God, you're on a track that's drifting you into dangerous territory. You just think it's neutrality.
The saying is that nature abhors a vacuum, and there is a vacuum whenever God is taken out of the schools, like with Bible reading and prayer in schools. I mean, at one time we had the Pledge of Allegiance and we had a prayer in the schools. Not now. There's a vacuum.
And J.D. Vance did say, we're not going to force Christianity on anybody. He wasn't for that either. If somebody doesn't want it, we're not forcing it. So I think he gave a pretty good, complete answer. We're not forcing on anybody, but you don't want to force it out either, because that's unnatural in a way that's not good. And people think, well, we'll just have a neutral school system.
Nope.
Ken, would you read, we're still into the why God doesn't like the occult. Would you read Deuteronomy 12:30, please?
Take heed to yourself that you are not ensnared to follow them after they are destroyed from before you, and that you do not inquire after their gods, saying, how did these nations serve their gods? I also will do likewise. You shall not worship the Lord your God in that way, for every abomination to the Lord which he hates, they have done to their gods, for they burn even their sons and daughters in the fire to their gods.
Now, I realize they don't do that today, although they do abortion, but they would have these iron idols, heat them up red hot, beat drums so you couldn't hear the kids scream, and throw these babies into this horrible fire to get good luck from superstitious idols. And Halloween was a time when the Druids apparently sacrificed people and children. I know they don't do anything like that nowadays, but you're still messing around with the same kind of themes that they did.
It's interesting, what really stands out to me with that statement there is that God said, "You shall not." And people turn around and do exactly the opposite of what God said.
But
You
we're
know,
not doing it for that reason. We're doing it for the children. It's
well,
just
I was going to make
innocent candy.
in their defense, Ken, I was going to say, God said these things are an abomination to me. Well, there's another place in Proverbs that says these are an abomination, and it's like a proud look, a lying tongue, hands that shed innocent blood, a heart that devises wicked imagination. And you can go look at the rest of those, and they do all of those as well.
Right.
So, what difference does it make if they keep Halloween if they do all of these other things, which God considers to be abomination, and yet they do those anyway? So, I mean, they're steeped in not only this tradition and Halloween, Easter and Christmas, but all of these other human attitudes as well. And it's like a giant, the Bible describes like a giant veil over the minds of people that someday is going to be removed where they'll see and understand. And hopefully we'll get to see and experience that, and they will too. But when you're underneath deception, you don't know you're deceived. It's sort of a conundrum. In order to get out from under it, you have to start this journey to ask the question, am I deceived? And is this really wrong that I think is okay? And I think maybe if you ask yourself those questions, along with these points we'll make tonight, is maybe you could start your journey out of this and see back away from it and look at it for what it really is.
Sometimes it takes God opening up people's minds, though, to the truth and to the fact that they are deceived and they're hurting themselves and their children if they continue to do what they're doing right now.
Tim, would you read Jeremiah 4:22?
For my people are foolish; they have not known me. They are silly children. They have no understanding. They are wise to do evil, but to do good they have no knowledge.
I mean, in other words, people, let's say the traditions and policies of this world are getting more foolish because people don't want to look into the Bible, don't want to look into the truth. Now, and something occurred to me. I wonder how many kids, and the number may be low, who are messing around with the occult during this time of year, and actually a real demon is allowed to get to them. I don't have any idea the numbers, but I hear these stories of this lady lives in Minnesota, and some town in Minnesota, I guess north of Minneapolis, is the witch capital of America, according to her. And crazy things go on there, and she's visited. Well, these people may have started with Halloween, but now they're into the real witchcraft. I mean, I assume being influenced by real dark, evil spirits.
God said, I think it's in Isaiah, I think I wrote it down here. He says, shouldn't a people seek unto their God, should not a people seek unto their God for the living to the dead? It's like, why would you seek God in the dead instead of in the living? And I read this week that during the Reformation, in the Elizabethan period, they tried to reform these celebrations and do away with them, although they were not successful. But one of the comments claimed that Luther, when he nailed his 95 Thesis on the door of the All Saints Church in Wittenberg, did it on Halloween, on the night of All Hallows Eve.
31st.
Yeah. It's almost like he was making this statement that this is the most evil of all Roman celebrations that we should come out of, that he was trying to pull the Christians out of this overbearing Romish system that was polluting Christianity. And he did it on this night. And I think it's so important. And I don't know if everybody knows that. They know about Luther and what he did, but he did it on this night. And that makes a huge statement, in my opinion.
I was surprised. I learned that a few days ago. It's the birthday of Protestantism, October 31st. And it is interesting that he chose Halloween, or right before it, a few hours before it, to nail his challenges to the Roman Catholic Church at a time when that was dangerous to do.
Yeah, yeah. Well, it's certainly, I don't think it was by accident. I think it was a huge statement on his part.
Maybe there was some divine guidance in there as well.
I hope so. I hope there was.
I hope there was. By the way, while Luther gets some of the credit for the Protestant movement, I think those men who translated the Bible out of Latin into, I think, French, German, and English, like Tyndale, but a few others, deserve a lot of credit, because that's what the church feared. The truth once it was only Latin and only priests read Latin and most people couldn't read anyway, they kind of had the holy word of God locked up. And once it got loose, that's problematic.
Kind of like the media today. We don't want the people to know the truth.
No.
We can just keep them blinded and keep them hearing what we want to spoon feed them every day, and we can control them.
Yep. And that once they started discussing the Bible. Now, of course, I would agree that Martin Luther didn't go far enough, but it was still a good start. And he meant well. I guess you can criticize, because there are things he did later in life that I wouldn't agree with, but that's a whole nother story. Nobody's perfect, far from it. But I thought it was interesting what you said, Stan.
Yeah, I'm with you, Dr. Ricks. I just learned that this week, and I'd never heard that before, and I didn't know if there was truth to it or not. Maybe it deserves a little more investigation, but it was fascinating. It was in that article.
It's true. This is the birthday of Protestantism. Somehow that connection seems, well, anyway, it's interesting.
And tomorrow in the Catholic world, it's All Saints Day. Isn't that what that is? Yeah.
One thing I think we can agree, though, God would not want his people to be following occultish activities. Would you read Isaiah 65:12, please, Ken?
Therefore, because when I called, you did not answer. When I spoke, you did not hear, but did evil before my eyes and chose that in which I do not delight.
And I just think if you look at the Bible carefully, it's clear God does not delight in worshiping the dead or any dead stuff, occult stuff in religion. I know Halloween is about all the evil spirits coming out of the grave and coming back to life and whatever they do. And I guess vampires are the living dead or whatever the deal is. Actually, I think vampires are more a modern thing. I don't think they had vampires that much in most of the ancient world.
I don't know where the origin of that came from.
I don't either.
But, I mean, hundreds of years, I mean, it's been going on for a few hundred years. You know what? I know what started it. Vlad the Impaler.
That's right. Was that in
Vlad the Impaler,
Transylvania, which is near Czechoslovakia, right? Or that general part of the world?
He actually did that to stop the Muslim. Yeah, that's what it was. He did that. He did it to the Muslim, to stop the Muslims from invading his land or something. He was a prince or a king or something. Memory serves me right.
Mm-hmm.
And he tried to instill fear in them from entering his country.
Shoved them on stakes and just left them there.
And assuming that a lot of them were superstitious too, you can see how things like that might frighten them.
Oh, yeah.
It's like, do you know that, and I think it was MacArthur, but it could have been somebody else, when he was fighting Muslims in that Philippine island, the South one that's Islamic, he would coat the bullets in pig's fat that our
Yeah,
army
yeah,
shot at them.
yeah.
And he made a point to let them know, when you come to resist us, we're going to shoot you with pig's fat.
Mm-hmm.
Knowing that in their world, that meant they would go to the land of whatever their version of hell is.
Yeah.
And it worked.
Yep.
I know we might chuckle at all that crazy, but it worked to some extent, to a great extent.
When he's talking about dead bodies too, look how far the Bible went with the early Israelites in dealing with dead bodies. I mean, over and over again, it said, a dead body's an unclean thing. They weren't to come into the temple if they'd handled a dead body. They were to put a dead body in the grave, and to bury it and to, dispose of it. And then the people that handled the dead body were to go wash themselves and burn their clothes. I mean, there was a lot to do with handling a dead body and playing with a dead body, and imagine the extent the Bible went with dealing with that, and yet people want to drag out the symbols of a dead body and put it in their front yard and put it on display. Almost exactly the opposite of what God wanted the Israelites to do with dead bodies. Even though it's done in I guess in a symbolized way, but death, toying with death, playing with death, dead bodies, and things of such nature seem to be contrary to what God originally intended for his people.
Yeah, I think Jews are supposed to get the body in the ground within 2 days. Isn't that right? Something like that. Get in the ground quickly.
Right.
Which isn't a bad policy, truthfully. I mean, when you can. By the way, we mentioned that Halloween is a number 2 commercial draw. I think, you know how American marketing is. In one sense, they made Halloween bigger than it ever used to be, starting in the 20s and 30s, as the American marketing machine got revved up to make money.
Mm-hmm.
And it's made, and it's for adults too. Costumes, candy, even drinks for Halloween parties and Halloween movies and other stuff. They make a ton of money, and they made it bigger and bigger so more and more kids want to do it.
It's more for adults now than it is for kids. When I was younger, the adults didn't care nothing about it. They were more mentally mature, I think, than the adults are today. Because it was a joke to them almost. It's just kind of a thing. I have noticed though that, like all things, it seems to be cyclical, because there was a period in time in the past where this kind of stuff was kind of a big celebration, especially like Rome and those places. But once things started in this country, it was kind of small time. And even throughout, the 50s, 60s, my childhood, it was small time, but it's ramping back up to be a very prominent, celebrated day. I mean, it's weird to see it kind of ramp up to the level it is. Like you said, 15-foot skeletons, every kind of gore and nasty. The movies they put out are unwatchable. I mean, it's just bizarre.
This time of the year, that they just flood the market, movie channels and all of the.
It's all it's
movie
on.
It's all it's on. I mean, for a whole month, you have nothing to choose from, but all of that garbage, and you just, do you want to sit and feed on that all day or go do something productive?
Yeah.
When it comes to making money, I call the merchandising machine, that's America's merchandising machine, is powerful. They push, but you would think, while you're pushing Halloween so big, how come they don't push Thanksgiving all that much? Or it's only about watching football on Thanksgiving? I don't know. This seems like Thanksgiving should be number 2. When you think that St. Louis, that Thanksgiving and maybe the 4th of July should be number 2 and 3, but no, it's Halloween.
Thanksgiving is about good and about giving thanks to God. That's not something that society promotes, is it?
Not commercial. You know,
There's no money in it.
You go in the stores and you'll see a few Thanksgiving things, but the Christmas decorations and all that have already gone. You know, they've already taken 14 rows and aisles for the Christmas decorations. So you get one row of Thanksgiving things, and they've already surpassed that with the Christmas decorations.
Yeah,
It's almost like Thanksgiving is sandwiched between Halloween and Christmas. It gets only a little attention.
it's a blip. Thanksgiving, which
That's
used
true.
to be a huge, it was big. It was like second
Yes.
to
Yeah.
Christmas. It's become a blip. There's no money
Yeah.
in it other than food.
Mm-hmm.
There's no, I mean, people don't decorate a whole lot for Thanksgiving. They don't do any of that stuff, but there's money in Halloween. There's money in Christmas and Easter and all that, but there's no money really in turkeys. I mean, other than the turkeys. I mean,
But, you know,
there's no money there.
America's commercial powerhouses could have done better if they wanted to. Like you say, Wayne,
By the
anything
way,
good
I
they don't seem
recommend
to want
real
to push.
cranberry sauce instead of the stuff in the can.
Oh, by the way, Carl says real pumpkin pie, where you actually take out, I guess, the thick pumpkin and you boil it down, you know, it's really great and healthy. But the stuff they give you in the can is slush. So if you're making your pumpkin pie with the easy stuff, you're missing the real thing.
I didn't know that.
That's what he says. So most people aren't even getting the best of Thanksgiving. We're not eating the real natural pumpkin pie.
Or natural food, period.
Yeah.
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 Highly processed.
I often wondered what a perfectly ripe banana actually tastes like, because they bring them up here green, and any food you pick green is not the same if it's vine ripe, like the tomatoes you grow in your garden. So I officially can say I've never eaten a ripe banana in my life.
Tell him to put it in his window.
I guess you'll have to go to some tropic island and spend the time when the bananas get ripe in order to.
Yeah, I think I was in Jamaica once, and bananas cost more there than they did at Walmart here. Don't ask me to explain it, but that's my memory.
Oh man.
Also, we believe Babylon is the foundation for much of the paganism. And I don't think that really surprised anybody, right? They had bonfires and bone fires and all that Druid stuff that we've talked about already. But also, we believe that as a general theme, the Roman Catholic Church decided the best way to get the people of Rome to accept Christianity was to blend Christianity and paganism together, so that the pagans wouldn't have to give up anything.
Mm-hmm.
And guess what? Their All Saints' Day corresponds to the pagans worshiping the dead. And my understanding, the way sun worship goes is at a certain date, which is roughly where we are now, the pagans realize they're going to face 6 months of diminished sunlight. So they're going to start worshiping the sun to bring sunlight back and kind of prepare for 6 months of darkness. And the worship of the dead, I guess, is to appease the dead. And the Catholic Church turned that into All Hallows Day to worship dead saints. See how that fits perfectly?
Yeah, I think Pope Boniface, I think that's how you pronounce his name, actually made that celebration, I think in 609, on the very day of the Day of the Dead of the pagans. I mean, that's a point of fact in history. He actually picked that day to make All Saints Day a celebration, and he actually what is the name of the big temple over there in Rome? The Parthenon. He actually rededicated the Parthenon at that time as well. So it became a religious ceremony, and it was on the Day of the Dead of the pagans. So wow, what a day to pick!
All those coincidences, isn't it? But it was, and I guess you'd have to say it worked. And it's like Satan said, well, if I can't beat Christianity, I'm going to co-opt it as much as I can.
Yeah. And another thing about reading this, background to this subject, the Roman Catholics instituted this, and we know that that Ireland is largely Roman Catholic. So when the Irish immigrants came to the United States, they're the ones that actually brought the idea of the pumpkin or the jack-o'-lantern to America in its early stages. They say that they used to use a turnip to carve out these faces and images, but I guess at some point it's hard to carve out a turnip or a rutabaga, so they finally picked the pumpkin. It was a lot easier.
Yeah.
Unless they grow them rutabagas really big over there.
But
Yeah,
that tradition was brought to America by a largely Roman Catholic country, and so here we find it in the United States as a tradition here in the Americas and other countries. There are Britain and Australia and Canada all keep those, but there are other countries in South America, Central and South America, that celebrate Halloween as well. But it's hard to believe that something like that was brought over very really in a modern era, and now it's become ingrained in our society so deeply.
I think the dates would be like 1848, when they had a whole bunch of problems in Germany and in Ireland, and a bunch of Catholics moved to America. And prior to that, Christmas was, for the most part, outlawed in parts of America or didn't get much attention. And then it started to grow. And I think after the Civil War, America's commercial juggernaut said, look, we can make a ton of money off Christmas and Halloween, and the rest is history. They pushed it. Mm-hmm. And I believe, I'm giving an opinion, of even some of those people who ran some of those big department stores were Jewish owned. They knew that it wasn't real, but it was big money. And that's all some of the, I call them merchandisers in America, cared about, was big bucks.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't think they really believed in Christmas and Halloween. At least some of them didn't. But hey, it's big bucks. Mm-hmm. And they made it big. And one more thing I will add, we probably will mention this later, but most of the characters are worshiping dead things, dead images, vampires and ghosts and witches coming from the dead. But America, the commercial enterprise America, has added one more thing: comic book characters. And I think that's added a little, it makes it more commercial. They can sell a whole bunch of toys and like Spider-Man paraphernalia, Spider-Man suits. The girl across the street, I saw her walking out the door. She had this giant, I guess she's about 12, giant costume. At first I thought it was kind of a purple bunny, but it looked more like a giant frog, like creature from some comic book. I didn't really get a good look. But can you see how that's just added to the financial value of Halloween?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, tons of money spent on costumes every year. They all have to have a new costume for this year.
And some of them are cute. I mean, I thought that if it was a giant frog, I couldn't tell what it was, but all you could see was the face, totally zipped up in it. And I'm sure it wasn't cheap either.
Well, it also starts the children off very young, and getting them hooked into this idea of celebrating Halloween. I mean, it's fun. If it's a cartoonish character, then it must be fun and okay. But where does it lead? Where does it end up? And where did it originate? I guess is what we're trying to explain.
Most people say, I love Superman and Batman and Robin, and Spider-Man, and they do make great costumes for Halloween, I'm guessing. I actually haven't seen much, but I've seen a lot of Spider-Man though, because it seemed like Spider-Man fits. But a couple of years ago, the guy across the street had a gigantic spider web all in the front of his house with a big black spider. I'm sure it was all some kind of plastic, but it was kind of a shock when you looked out your window and you saw this giant spider and this giant.
Are we ready for Deuteronomy?
Okay, let's go to Deuteronomy 18:11.
Or one who conjures spells, or a medium, or a spiritualist, or one who calls up the dead, for all who do these things are an abomination to the Lord.
We can pass over Matthew 15:9, which says, God says in vain to worship him with the traditions and doctrines of men. We can pass over that one because I know we're getting close to being out of time. I wanted to go to two scriptures. 1 Corinthians 5:8, please, Ken.
Therefore, let us keep the feast not with old leaven, nor with the leaven of malice and wickedness, but with the unleavened bread of sincerity and truth.
So the holy days, these are Gentiles far away from Jerusalem, many years after Christ was crucified. And Paul is saying, keep the feast, meaning biblical holy days. Those are the days that our country should be emphasizing or should be commercializing. Instead, we're commercializing the worshiping of the dead.
Mm-hmm. And they teach biblical principles. They teach things about God. They open up an understanding about the plan of God. And what does Halloween teach you? I mean, think about it. Which do you want to treat? Which do you want to teach and train your children to do? You know, things that are biblical, things that God wants you to do, or things that are ghouls and goblins and demonic spirits and evil. You know, I mean, to me, again, I asked the question, you know, use reason, you know, use logic. Does this seem logical that we should be doing this? And certainly if you look at it biblically, you'll know that we shouldn't.
Yeah.
In the last scripture that kind of fits, Deuteronomy 14. Can you pick that up, Ken?
And you shall spend that money for whatever your heart desires. You shall eat, therefore, before the Lord your God, and you shall rejoice, and you and your household. They're really missing the boat there, because think of all that kind of money that would be spent if they promoted that holiday.
Yeah,
that's true.
And the whole principle is when they went to the Feast of Tabernacles, they would spend the money on what they enjoy. So I'm sure if they had a candy industry then, they probably had dates and different things, but if they had a candy industry, they'd give the kids candy at the Feast of Tabernacles. I know the Bible does mention raisin cakes. It doesn't mention a lot of other, what we would call candy-like desserts and dates. But in principle, that's when God would give all the good stuff to the kids. And that's what we should be giving them. And for those of you who see this podcast and want to change, feel free to go to our church website, learn about our Feast of Tabernacles, or even other feasts in the spring or summer. Come and help you and your kids enjoy God's bounty.
There you go.
And as you said, Stan, and they'll learn a lot of good biblical principles.
Well, we also have booklets on Halloween too, and the origins of Halloween. All of these things that we brushed on tonight. Some of the booklets we have go into greater detail on each of these subjects, and you can do your own research. I mean, just look it up. I mean, look up the origins of Halloween, where it came from, how it was derived, how it was, you know, introduced into America and into your town and city, and when it happened, and then go up, look up the biblical references that we talked about tonight and what God thinks about, you know, demonism and wizards and spirits and witches and all of that. And you're going to open up a whole new world, I guess, to understanding about what God thinks about what we believe is something that we shouldn't be participating in, especially not for little children.
Yeah, prove it for yourself.
Absolutely.
It has no redeeming value.
and the closer you are to horrible, dark, occult things, the worst spiritual influences are upon you.
Yep.
Clem, would you play our prophecy music? I want to discuss prophecy for a few minutes here.
Done.
Okay. I know I have no idea about the Asian trip, but it appears Trump got pretty good trade deals, and it'll help the U.S. bring jobs back to America the next couple of years, bring factories back, more fair trade and all that. And who knows which way China will go. So that's kind of the big mystery. But as far as the phase 2 of the Middle East deal, it appears that Hamas, and of course I knew they would cheat, so it doesn't shock me. They're not disarming and they're not cooperating. And so is this good or bad in the long run? Let me give you an opinion. This might actually be not so bad in the long run if Israel, and apparently they claim they're going to get a Middle East peacekeeping force from acceptable Islamic nations, and they go in and they force Hamas to disarm, meaning probably roughing up a lot of them, taking their cash or weapons and whatever. To me, if Hamas is extremely weakened, then you can go to phase 3, 4, 5, the peace talks, which go all the way to basically de-radicalizing Gaza, which means them no longer hating the Jews, or at least pretending they don't hate the Jews. But I think it's better if they have to rough up Hamas, because if you let them off the hook easy, they're just going to come back in a few years in some way, shape, or form.
Guaranteed.
So actually, the fact that they're not cooperating openly is probably a good thing.
Well, it's like the paid protesters in the United States. You know, there is it's blind rebellion and a seething hatred. And I don't see how you ever change their minds. You know, I mean, they're so indoctrinated to the point that they will never give up. They'll die first before they give up their ideology. And I looked up a scripture in Jeremiah that says baldness is coming to Gaza. Coming upon Gaza. Out of the north is coming this army that's going to bring baldness to Gaza. And, are those prophecies, were they for Jeremiah's time, or were they looking forward to a time when, Gaza or the Palestinians made these choices where they sold out Israel so many times when they had the chance to show mercy to them and they wouldn't do it? And God's justice, God's, judgment is going to fall upon them. They've had so many opportunities in history to make a peace agreement, which they've always gone back on. They have no history of making a peace agreement that they truly believe in. They still want to get rid of the Jews and get them out of that country and get them out of that land. And I think if they had a force big enough to help them fulfill that, they would do it. But that's my opinion.
They believe in genocide, if you put it bluntly. It's pure devil-inspired hatred. But so I think it's better that they're showing see, if they were smart, they pretend to be nice, hide weapons, pretend to be nice and bide their time. I know they're going to do some of that too, but I think it's actually a good thing that they're showing their true colors. And here's the best thing I think you can hope for is if they get substantially diminished, I mean, really harmed greatly, so they won't be much of an influence. You could have maybe 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 years of tenuous freedom and peace in the Middle East. I'm not going to say it's permanent. I don't believe you'll ever get permanent peace until Christ comes back. But you might get a tenuous peace based on, say, American and Israeli military power and all the Arab nations liking the goodies they get in trade with America and Israel, financial blessing. Because they're going to be financially better off if they cooperate with Israel and America financially. I think Trump has convinced him of that, and it's probably true. This giving way to all these terrorists has not helped the Arab states at all. And maybe some of them can see it. And Israel is strong enough and has shown that they're not going to be pushed aside that easily. So they might as well cooperate. Now, I'm giving an opinion. If we can get 6 or 7 years of peace in the Middle East, that would be a wonderful thing.
Yes.
If we can get that.
Well, Trump has promised to go in and build up. It's like, who was it? The general that rebuilt Germany after the war. He who was it? I can't think of his name all of a sudden. Who had this doctrine in order, immediately.
Was it Marshall?
Marshall, yeah, the Marshall Plan. To go back in 1947 and rebuild Germany and rebuild these nations and cities that they had torn apart. Trump has promised to do that in Palestine and Gaza, build glittering, shopping malls and real estate and hotels and high-rise buildings that would bring an economy there that those people probably have never seen in their entire existence. But they won't have it. I don't think they'll have it. It could bring prosperity, it could bring peace, it could bring jobs, it could bring, wealth like they've never imagined. And
they don't want none of it.
They don't want to have anything to do with it.
They'll destroy it.
So that's why the more they beat down Hamas now, I still don't think it'll work, because the best you can get is get them to pretend to want to coexist with Israel. They'll never really, really want to do it. If they can get 5, 6, 7 years of peace, that's a good thing. That's the best you can get. The worst is, of course, it can be like it always is, one big mess after another big mess.
Mm-hmm.
But this time, the difference is they've gotten all the surrounding Islamic states to sign on, like Qatar, who used to be the major financial supporters of Hamas. Let's assume that Qatar won't do too much cheating, and that may be a false assumption. That means they won't have the financial backing, and I assume all that United Nations money and stuff they used to get, they won't get. So they're going to be weakened. But the truth is, we can hope for some level of peace, but we know it's going to be tentative.
Mm-hmm.
But I still think, here's what could happen. I recognize I'm being overly optimistic. After China makes a reasonably good trade deal, they'll cheat a little bit too, of course. Communists lie, and their stats can't be trusted. But even still, Trump is going to put in mechanisms to measure stuff, verifiability. The whole world will be doing fairer trade than they've done for many, many years.
Mm-hmm.
And in theory, if you have fairer trade, you'll have more global prosperity and peace. And now, as I say, it won't be permanent peace. We all know that. There'll be chicanery and cheating. But that's a good thing as long as it lasts. Now, eventually, the devil will say, yeah, and I'll use this time for more decadence in America.
Yeah.
Lull us to sleep. Take some more chocolate cake and relax.
Hey, I like chocolate cake.
I think that's where we're at. I think that, not the chocolate cake, but I think that's where we're at.
Decadence.
But there's another side of this. Peace and prosperity are a good thing, but spiritually, it's hard to stay fervent when you're not under any particular pressure and you got plenty of stuff in your belly.
Yeah. Well, the scripture says peace, peace when there is no peace.
Yep.
They'll say peace, peace and prosperity, or, eat, drink, and be merry, for tomorrow we die. You're right, Dr. Rick, so right. Their prosperity brings a sort of a lull. I don't really need God at this time, because my bank account's full, my pocket's full of money, and I've got a new car in the driveway, and I live in a really nice home, and I got plenty of groceries. They really don't need God at this moment. It affects Christianity as well. You know, when the terrorists struck those buildings in New York, the churches filled up within weeks. You know, people were going back to church. They thought, this is it. This is the end. We're being attacked. We need God. And within several months, it sort of drifted back to the same old lull again. And unfortunately, that's the world in which we live. There's no loyalty when it comes to God and serving Him. And hopefully that hopefully people will be awake when the time comes, and they won't be asleep like so many scriptures Jesus talked about being asleep, you know. And you know, the virgins that slept, and all of them slept and slumbered, and then when he came, they weren't ready. Half of them weren't ready.
I mean, I hope we have peace and prosperity, but I hope that we can find ways to stay fervent in our following God. Which, let's face it, it's hard to do, but that should be our goal, because we know at some point it will end, and then will come religious persecution and a whole bunch of other bad things. But see, if I were Satan, I try to lull people to sleep, and then after when they're asleep, hit them hard, and they'll theoretically they'll be too far from God to do anything. Now, hopefully, none of that will happen to us, but I still think that could be where we are in prophecy, but maybe not. Maybe things will fall apart next week. You never can predict, right?
Time will tell.
And there is a lot of rumor that the Communist Chinese Party is in danger in China. A lot of the people hate it. And if China falls, I mean the Communist Party falls, that could cause a disruption. That actually might be good for the Chinese people if there's not too much bloodshed, but I guess only time will tell. But we will see. But probably because the Communist Party is so violent and vicious, people probably be afraid to revolt. But I believe there's a lot of people in China who hate the Communist Party. And interesting, when Trump went around negotiating in the Asian rim around China, he was able to get most of those countries to cooperate with him on tariffs and not protect China. Xi Jinping tried to do the opposite, but countries like Vietnam, and I'm trying to read, Thailand, South Korea, Japan, Burma, I think they have a different name now, but you all know what I mean. Australia, Malaysia, they all went with America over China.
Mm-hmm.
So China is losing. I mean, at least the Communist Party is losing their influence. I mean, not totally, but in some other key places over there whose names I can't think of. So I think the Communist Party is feeling the pressure. They're not liked. Even many of their neighbors know they cheat and bully them. They've been bullying the Philippines over islands for probably several years now.
Yeah.
And even the Europeans realize they've been cheating in the car market, dumping cars to drive the European car makers down like they did American car makers. So all that, I'm not sure what all that means, except I think the next country to watch is China. The Communist Party is under pressure. I'd like to see them fall, but you never know, right?
It would be nice. They almost
At any
have
rate,
to, for the world leader, if the world leader does get control over, the whole planet, they almost have to fall. Something has to get.
Oh, by the way, and Japan has gotten a pro-Trump, pro-American conservative government.
Wow.
Even more so. Now, I'm not sure about South Korea, but Japan, which is the bigger economy, has it. So things are not going in China's favor at the moment.
Right.
At least not the Communist Party's favor. So anyway, watch prophecy, watch China, and I think we're in for a period of relative peace, except I worry about the Democratic Party in America.
Yes.
Well, on that point, I say if that's all you got, gentlemen, I hope everyone enjoys the rest of their Sabbath. get plenty of sleep, maybe get some chocolate cake tomorrow.
Yes.
And we'll see you back here next week. Now we will have the week of Thanksgiving that Friday. We will not be on. That's just for future reference. All right. Good night, everybody.
Good night, again.
Again.
Good night.
We're happy you could make it, and so glad you are here, and hope that we've been able to make God's word more clear. Until next time, may God be with you in everything you try. But for now, till next week, we have to say goodbye.